if we could hook those people who were otherwise going to sit at home and not take any action at all, then we could get, more business.
Welcome to the Mastering E-commerce Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Eitan Koter, co-CEO of Vimy. In an era of rising acquisition costs and increased competition, this podcast is dedicated to helping you drive sales, engage customers, and build meaningful communities so you can turn passive visitors into active buyers. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on future content. Now let's get started with the episode. Welcome listeners to another episode of Mastering E-commerce Marketing. Today's guest is Alice Brown, founder of Seventh Wave Stories, messaging strategist and copywriter with an unexpected twist. After 12 years coaching surf and ski, Alice took the emotional psychology of adventure sports and flipped it into a revolutionary approach to brand messaging. If your brand's messaging feels flat, forgettable, or AI-generated, Alice is here to shake things up. She has developed a 3-step human-centered framework for uncovering big ideas, not from creative guesswork, but from deep customer research and emotional truth. In a noisy, automated marketing world, Alice reminds us of the most powerful messages are still human. Get ready to rethink how you communicate, connect, and convert, from first impression to final say. Hey Alice, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really well, thank you.
Love the intro?
Oh, yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, you're doing very special things, so I'd love to learn more about that during this episode. But before we get started, if you had to pick 3 words that matter most to you, personally or professionally, what would they be?
Yeah, this is a hard one, but I tried to pick 3 things that relate in both a professional and a personal context. The first one is outdoors. I live down in the southwest of England, in Cornwall, by the sea. My background is in, as you said, adventure sports coaching, and being in the outdoors is so paramount for me, not just for having that sort of brain rinse in the ocean if I'm going surfing or swimming, but it gives me that clarity and that reset when I'm working and I'm stuck on a challenge. Just forcing myself to go outside sometimes, even when I don't want to, just lets everything dissipate. And, those difficult problems and obstacles you have in work, it just gives them that freedom just to sort of resettle, and sometimes gives you a new perspective. So outdoors is one. The next one is network or community. I guess they're interchangeable, but being a self-employed person, having a network of people around me is so important to bounce ideas off. But then in terms of the professional side, customer research and really human emotional conversations with people is so important to the work that I do. I wouldn't be able to do it without those. And I think a lot of the success and metrics that we've got from projects have come from those real human conversations. Mm-hmm. Then the third word that I've chosen is challenge. And on a personal sense, the last 18 months or so, I've really gotten into cold water swimming and the whole ice bath trend and that mental challenge of overcoming something difficult. I think it's an Andrew Huberman podcast. He was talking about how putting yourself in uncomfortable situations can help you sort of overcome things in other areas of your life. So I think I made the analogy last year when I was redoing my website of telling myself I can do difficult things and just seeing it as an obstacle that is overcomeable. I know that's not a real word, but hey ho. Seeing that challenge as just an opportunity for growth. Challenge was the third one that I wanted to go for, that I thought would fit both on that professional and personal level.
Yeah. So it seems that you are always trying to probably spend your time not in this regular state of mind or just energy preservation mindset, right? Going outdoors, probably clear all the clutter, gives you more focus to increase creativity, right? And inspiration on this default mode network of our mind, of our brain. And that challenge is also the way to learn something new, right? So the mind awakens in the new, right? So it gives you, there's no imposter syndromes here, I feel. So Yeah, challenges, obviously, on the professional life, on the personal life is a great way. And it is something we learn, right? Just to challenge ourselves, right? It's a practice. It's like a muscle and gives us a lot of, opportunities for growth, which is eventually what we all want, right? And you mentioned your background in coaching ski and surfing. How that background led you to marketing and strategy around copywriting and messaging?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was about 15 when I had to choose a work experience job for a week. And my peers would go to, pharmacy or, an architect's firm. And, some of them were stacking shelves. And from a young age, as a family, we'd spent a lot of time by the sea. And I was obsessed with being in the water through various, struggles at school, as you do. Being by the sea was my little safe space. So as soon as I got the opportunity to try a job, what I wanted to do was spend it in the sea. So I went and worked at a surf school for a week and I was hooked. I ended up surf coaching for about 12 years. And then in the summers here in the UK, and then in the winters, we'd go to Japan and Germany a few years as well. And my job was helping people overcome obstacles and hesitations that they had. Fears, some of them were quite real physical fears of injuring themselves or getting water up their nose. But then there was the emotional obstacles and hesitations as well. Maybe it was a bad experience they'd had in the ocean before. Maybe it was a lack of confidence. Maybe it was being intimidated by other people who'd had lessons before them and they hadn't, and they felt they didn't want to embarrass themselves. And yes, some of those obstacles and hesitations were irrational, but it was my job to address them, make them feel comfortable and confident doing something new, getting out of their comfort zone. And I saw after they'd finish a surf lesson or they'd book in for a full week of coaching, the transformation that they experienced and sort of the relief and self-belief that came with it. And that is what I was addicted to, helping people do something that they never thought was possible. And so, working in outdoor activity centres, it's a very short season, especially here in the UK. It's pretty cold in the winter. We don't get a lot of people coming down to surf unless you are, you live down here and you've got a really good wetsuit. We were finding that, that gap in the winter was really long. You ended up having to work in a cafe or something just to fill in the time, just waiting for that next season to come. So I thought, okay, how can I be more useful for these business owners? How can I give myself more work and extend my own season so I don't have to rely on the crappy job in the winter? So I started writing blogs about the things that I had conversations with the customers, either before they turned up for a lesson. Maybe I was sending them a few emails back and forth, trying to put them at ease of this new experience. Or it was a challenge they had actually in the lesson itself, and something that came out once we'd only got in the water or we'd only started trying to catch bigger waves. I started to write articles and blogs that would address those fears and hesitations. And it got really good response. We got, quite a lot of extra traffic through. I think I read every single Neil Patel blog that existed at the time. That was kind of my first foray into marketing, but I didn't see it as marketing. And I almost just fell into it thinking everyone has obstacles and hesitations when I meet them or they email me. So surely there are other people at home sitting there thinking, oh, I don't really want to go, or I feel a bit awkward or embarrassed, and maybe I just won't bother trying. So if we could hook those people who were otherwise going to sit at home and not take any action at all, then we could get, more business. The people that I worked with were just so enthusiastic about their job and they were incredible surfers, and the charisma that came across when they were coaching was infectious. But the more time they were sitting at a computer was the less time that they could be surfing or skiing. So I kind of took it upon myself to take that role off them, and a few blogs turned into a few, like a retreat page, a few web pages. I redid the whole website for one of the ski schools in Japan and just started trying to piece those pieces of the puzzle together of where in that customer journey do people feel this kind of obstacle or this one? Where can we address them? How can we sort of make that process smoother? And then lockdown hit and I couldn't go surf coaching. So I thought, well, I might as well try and use the skills that I've learned, but apply it to other businesses and other contexts and other products. So that was really how I accidentally transitioned into the world of marketing. It was never really an intentional move, but I felt like it was a perfect fit.
Interesting. So you figure out, or you've analyzed, or you saw those challenges, right? Some of the pains that people are facing, maybe limiting beliefs, right? And then how do you apply that to the marketing world? What's the connection? This is what I'm trying to understand.
So the obstacles and hesitations people feel to say yes to a new product. Obviously, the brand wants people to be a confident decision maker, right? So by having conversations with real people in the surf school, it was talking to them face to face. But what I do now, it's interviewing people, looking through survey results, maybe mining Reddit or Facebook groups and trying to find those emotional barriers that people experience, somewhat mapping that through the customer journey, depending on whether they are just, signing up for an email list or they're actually committing to a subscription. Where do those obstacles and hesitations show up? How can we address that? And how can we form it into sort of a strategy that will, create those confident decision makers? And to be honest, sometimes that confident decision is, no, I don't trust you, but it removes the possibility of having a sort of a tentative buyer who's maybe looking for loopholes. Instead, you just put that person off because they know it's not a good choice. And then actually the customer base that you have is confident that you're going to deliver, or that, they want you to succeed.
Yeah. Well, love it. So you also talk a lot about the big idea, right? So what do you mean by the big ideas and why does it matter?
Yeah, so big idea is essentially a concept or a truth or an insight that comes from your customers that they can relate to. For me, it's always on an emotional level, something that's memorable, something that's different from everything else in your marketplace that helps you stand out. And I use it as a hook for customers to sort of reel in those customers that they can align with. And it might be it might be a limiting belief. It might be sort of a desire or a sort of dream future that they might have, but it's used as that hook that can be used on multiple touch points. And what I like to do in the larger project is use that as a running thread through each of those moments of interaction with a customer to tie it all together. It helps build that almost psychological momentum as people move through the journey. And I, in hindsight, have developed a 3-stage, you can use it, think of it like a checklist, to ensure that the big idea that you're coming up with is going to resonate with people. It's different. It helps define the relationship that you have with your customers. And from that, it makes all those decisions that you have to make about marketing so much easier.
Yeah. So human-centered is obviously, and you mentioned that, right? It's more on the emotional level, right? Mm-hmm. But we all know that at some point of time, you need to tell exactly what you do, why you're so unique, what's differentiate you. And these can be obviously, things that are related to the founder's story, to whatever differentiating, statements that are very unique to that specific brand, but also around product and product differentiations. How do you balance between, those facts about products and the human-centered approach with these more focused around feelings and emotions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me, that big idea is always going to come from the customer. And every project that I do, no matter whether it's just a set of ads or an entire campaign and funnel, is to talk to customers. And I'll gather quantitative data through customer surveys, quality data through interviews to understand what intrinsically motivates someone to do the thing they do with your product, not to use your product specifically, but what do they do with that product? So, for example, I have been working recently with a free diving company. And so what I want to understand is not what intrinsically motivates someone to buy a mask and snorkel, but what intrinsically motivates someone to go free diving, and what does it allow them to do, or what does it allow them to get rid of? Either they're moving away from a pain or a frustration, and free diving is the resolution for that, or you're helping them move towards imagined future state that's desirable for that specific audience.
Yes.
So it's always coming down to the internal emotional driver. So as you asked, that sort of how do you balance the human side with sort of the product details and things like that? The connecting tissue between all of those touch points is the big idea. It is the emotion. It is that one truth or insight from the customer that you can pull out in, headings, subject lines. It always resurfaces again and again. And if it's a strong enough big idea, it can be buoyant through each of those touch points, no matter what stage of awareness they're in. But then the product details come in underneath. And so again, if we're thinking about those different moments in the customer journey with the surf school, how much it costs and how a lesson is constructed is going to be sort of a decision-making criteria towards the end. But sort of the things you'll be able to achieve are the things that you want to talk about at. And, some of those testimonials might be the things that you lead with at the start. So the top line is that recurrent big idea, but then below that, that's where we bring in the more factual side of things, or like evidence-based things that may come from the founder or the brand. They filter in underneath, but having that top line is really helpful to sometimes help you understand where the different elements go in that customer journey.
Great. So I like you to elaborate more on the 3-step framework, right? Let's try to break it down. If you can break it down for us in more details, I think it's going to be very insightful.
Absolutely. So I would think of it as more of a checklist than a framework. And it all comes down to these customer interviews and understanding everything from their perspective. So the first is obstacles and hesitations. What is stopping your customer from achieving the thing that they want to achieve, or moving away from this frustration that they have? And asking customers what, alternative solutions they've tried, asking them what alternative solutions they are looking at alongside you. What do they like and what do they dislike about those options? Having it come from their mouth and using the language verbatim of what they said can really draw out some interesting terminology and nuances of language that you're not going to get if you ask ChatGPT what your ICP is worried about.
Like the very specific category word bank, right? Which is so important to use, right, in your messaging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And you'll get these really strange analogies that you never would have thought of come out. You understand how they got their bruises and what keeps them up at night and what's stopping them from getting to that place. And keep asking what the importance of, the frustration is. How does that manifest in your life? And going those extra layers deeper to understand what they've struggled with is a really great way of pulling out such language that will help spark a big idea. The second thing, which we've already mentioned, is intrinsic motivation. What internally is driving them to achieve something, and thinking about the psychology of that can then influence your marketing. There's a psychological phenomena called construal level theory. And essentially what this is when you explain an idea or concept to someone and you explain how it looks in their real life, whether that's like a busy parent that's rushing around and they're just like grabbing a piece of toast from the kitchen and they're getting into their 5-seater where there's crisps all over the floor. You can imagine that in your head, right? You can imagine them, they've got all the school bags tucked in under their arms and they're a bit stressed and the car's a horrible mess.
The Koter ray is already is piping right in your body. That's just thinking about it.
So that creating that image in someone's head, they are more connected to it, but that experience is psychologically closer to them. So if you're creating an image of what a future might look like for that parent, rather than just saying, stress-free mornings and, plenty of time to drive the kids around, we're starting to generalize. There's not much specificity, and adding in those real textual details, which you can get from your customers when you ask them these questions of what their life looks like, what they want their life to look like, makes people feel psychologically closer to the thing that you're selling, and that future feels psychologically closer to them and more possible. It's more accessible. The third thing that we can look at on the checklist is the worldview. So how do your customers relate to you? Do they and how do they want to see themselves in the world? So really, there's just like a duality here. Do they want to be part of like a community? Do they want to see your brand as a supportive role? Or are they that performance-driven person that wants those 1% gains? They want to be better than everyone else. Could be in a gym context. It could be at work. Mm-hmm. Do they see themselves as someone who wants to be everyone else or be alongside everyone else? And I think picking one or the other really helps instate that worldview that can add so much richness to your big idea and helps your customers see themselves in the world as they want to be seen. And if you show your customers that you're helping them be that individual and hold that role in the world, people will get so behind you. They really get behind you. So think about whether your customer wants to be, that they're craving that community and that closeness with other people, and they want to see that other people have succeeded before, or are they trying to stand head and shoulders? And again, talking to your customers will help reveal that as the third sort of point on the checklist to create a really, really strong big idea.
Wow, nice. And that big idea, usually when you talk to brands and companies, did they already figure this out, or it needs to be explored and investigated?
I mean, there's the old view of sort of what the madmen did, and they drink half a bottle of whiskey and they lie on the sofa and they wait for divine inspiration to spark.
A moment
Yes. Those being in the outdoors, that's why I picked it, because occasionally they happen, but it's not the most reliable way of finding a big idea that's going to resonate with people. You have the risk of coming up with a big idea that is, okay, it's powerful and you can use it in every touch point, but is it going to resonate with people? And so the process of interviews is so important because it's reliable. You know that there are people out there that feel this thing that they have told you. I think that's, it's so valuable. So I think in terms of, sometimes you could come up with a big idea without asking your customers and then validate it with your customers. Okay, there's some merit to that, but I don't think it's as reliable a process as actually having those deep conversations with customers. What I would recommend is if you can contact your customers a short space of time after they've purchased or signed up or joined your email list, depending on what action you want them to take, and this big idea is going to create for your business. Mm-hmm. The closer to that moment of decision you can get, the more real and vivid the output will be, because it's very close to them. They'll be able to recall those sort of click triggers. They'll be able to recall that moment of frustration or relief or confusion potentially. Mm-hmm. And the closer you can get, the more detail and texture you'll get in their responses. There have been scenarios I've worked with clients where that's been difficult, and we've only actually got responses from people who bought 6 months ago, 9 months ago. Their responses are still useful, but the further you go away from that decision-making moment, they start to sometimes assume things. If they can't remember, they might be more generalized oh, I think this is how it went. I can't remember what order I saw those different touch points. I think I was looking at this brand, or I can't remember the name of the last person that I used for this solution. Without that specificity, it's harder to get those big ideas. So actually, if you can get really close to that decision-making moment, it will help a lot more in getting that nuanced language from people. So then it should be easier to glean that big idea from the transcripts of those interviews that you've had.
Yes. And obviously in e-commerce, it's totally based on impulse purchase, and, it's much bigger than the product itself, right? The why you make that purchase. And as you said, if you ask that question very close to the purchase time, then obviously you'll get much more deep answers than, 6-month period. So yeah, that's a very, very good, feedback. And Alice, there is any way to measure a great messaging, process? How do you usually, what are the KPIs? How do you usually measure success?
So the projects that I've worked on quite recently, it's been an ads campaign, it's been email sequences, welcome sequences, also product detail pages. So when they are smaller projects, it's easier to have that specific KPI because you don't have all of those different variables. Say you were creating an entirely new funnel, but it all comes down to consistency. There's obviously going to be other influences that might change or influence the outcomes and the measurable results, other things going on in the market. But for me, it's all down to making sure that that my output, the things that I write for my clients, is measurable. And one, making sure that there's consistency in those messages across the touch points. It's down to sales, it's down to email signups, clicks through emails. It's about sort of training your customers to make those interactions and try and remove those sort of like hesitant people. So once we have launched the copy for whatever project it is, we will determine how many people we need to go through that touch point or that funnel for us to see reliable enough results. And then we can analyze what might be working, what might not be working. User testing's really, really useful to get that quality data. And then we optimize. So I know a lot of other copywriters will send you your web copy and then say goodbye. But, with the growing in market, and recently I've actually seen so many businesses who I thought on the surface were doing really well close their doors. Optimizing and making sure we're getting those incremental gains is paramount, which I think distinguishes me from a lot of other copywriters in that, yes, I do the messaging strategy as well, but I would call myself a conversion copywriter because at the end of the day, it's about delivering results to a client that isn't just copy that sounds nice. It's something that's actually going to move the needle for them. And, yes, I may only be writing one series of ads for people, but I like to leave my clients with that big idea that can be used across the funnel if they then want to go and utilize it in other places, because it just brings that coherence to the message and helps differentiate brands, helps them stand out.
Yeah. Alice, I want to learn more about Seventh Wave Stories, about your agency. First, I want to understand and learn about the name. I love the name, by the way. And what type of services you provide, what type of customers you want to attract.
Mm-hmm. So, Alice, I was originally Alice Writes Copy. That was the name when I sort of took that leap to go solo, leave the surf school and ski school life. It was Ron Seal. It does what it says on the tin. I wrote copy for people, but I felt there was that perception of I am an order taker. There is a unspoken belief that copywriters will be told that they need to write 500 words for this section, 200 words for this section. We'll tell you what to write. You just need to make it sound good. And after not long did I realize that it totally negates my process of making copy intrinsically human, making it customer aligned, and using them to drive the copy. And there were there were instances where I would be butting heads with clients because they wanted me to say something and I wanted to say something different because their customers didn't care about the thing that they wanted me to write about. And so Alice Writes Copy existed for 6 or so years. And so I've transitioned into seventh wave stories. If there's any surfers listening, you will probably know, supposedly the 7th wave in a set is the most powerful one. Mm-hmm. It's got the most momentum. It's the biggest. And this idea of a big idea is that I want to find the one that's got the most power. It's got the most momentum. It's the most, it stands above all the other ones. And the stories is, it's the storytelling that I do in the copy and in the messaging that is essentially telling the story of the customer. There's obviously connotations of fluidity and, cycles and things like that with the ocean analogies. And so the services we provide for customers is obviously rooted around this big idea. And we do the strategy, but we also do the execution. So I might have someone come to me and say, we have this new product to launch or a course we need selling. We've sold it in the past, but we want to put it evergreen. I will go through that 3-step checklist to find a big idea that will tie everything together. I will go through those customer interviews and help pull out language that's going to help us drive the big idea and the messaging, but also help clients reinforce their brand voice in all of the touch points and give them suggestions as to how they can change their voice and their tone to align with the customers, but also to give them that really strong identity. Mm-hmm. A lot of the clients that I have write things, the founder writes a bit, their marketing manager writes a bit, and there's a bit of a disconnect. So I like to give clients, I guess, as a little added extra ideas on how they can develop that voice so that it aligns with that worldview that we talked about. And then when it comes to copywriting, we will flesh out all of those touch points, make them real, then optimize. So yeah, strategy as well as strategy and execution. And the clients that I work with, a lot of them are in the outdoor space, well-being, sport. But this criteria checklist, 3-stage framework is applicable, I think, to so many businesses, even if it's a B2B and that intrinsic motivation is wanting to get home at 5 p.m. To be home with your kids and to have that work-life balance and understand what's intrinsically motivating them to be productive at work, but have the mental brain space to be the best, again, parent that they could be. So those are usually the clients that come to me. But yeah, I think the process is applicable to so many other different business verticals as well.
Sure. And what's the best way to find you, Alice?
I'm usually on LinkedIn. I spend a lot more time there than, say, Instagram. But I'm growing resources on my website at the moment, which I'm sure you'll be able to pop in the show notes.
Sure.
I'm currently writing an ebook. So hopefully by the time this is launched, it's really digging into that 3-step framework / checklist, in seeing sort of real life application of how I've come up with big ideas using those 3 steps. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love you to, let me know if you have any thoughts on what I chatted about today. Please feel free to reach out.
Great, Alex. Thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed so much and learned a lot.
No problem at all. That is really, really lovely to chat. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the end of this episode. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our future content. And if you could share this with just one person, it would make all the difference. Are you looking to accelerate your sales with the power of shoppable video? Explore Vimeo, the video commerce platform that includes live shopping, shoppable video, and social commerce capabilities. Visit Vimeo at www.vimeo.net, that's VIMMI.net, where you can start with a free-for-life package. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more valuable insight in our next episode.